Tiber Septim, the emperor that conquered the entire continent of Tamriel, founding the Third Empire or the Septim Empire, and according to his supporters, ascended to godhood after he died, becoming the ninth divine Talos, the divine of governance. The two previously mentioned statements, that he conquered Tamriel and founded the Third Empire, are set-in-stone historical facts of Tamriel, whereas his ascending to divinity is still up to debate, as are a lot of things about Tiber Septim, including his original birthplace and his true personality, the type of man Tiber Septim really was. This debate is more or less divided amongst two sides: orthodoxy, the side that believes that Tiber Septim was a great man who did ascend to godhood, and heresy, the side that believes that Tiber Septim was nothing more than a power-hungry tyrant who never ascended to godhood after his death. In this video, I'm going to explain what both sides believe, and then I'll explain what I believe and why. I'll start off with the orthodoxy side. Tiber Septim, whose birth name was Talos Stormcrown, was a Nord who was born in the Nordic continent of Atmora, in the Second Era 828. However, sometime still very young in his life, both he and his brother Agnorith moved to Skyrim Tamriel, where they both grew up in, and where Talos joined the army of the Colovian estates. But it didn't take him long to become the general of said army. After becoming general, Talos began his conquest of the rest of modern-day Cyrodiil on behalf of King Cuchulainn of the Colovian estates, and by the year 854, he and his armies captured the imperial city, which gave complete control of Cyrodiil to King Cuchulainn of the Colovian estates, who then became Emperor Cuchulainn of Cyrodiil. However, sometime in that same year, Emperor Cuchulainn was assassinated by a Breton assassin, who also cut Talos's throat and burned down the imperial palace. Talos survived, however he could no longer use his dragonborn shouts, and had to permanently command his troops with a whisper. And after the assassination, Talos succeeded Cuchulainn as emperor, and renamed himself to Tiber Septim. Fast forward until after his conquest of the rest of Tamriel. After conquering Tamriel, Tiber Septim ruled as the emperor of the Septim Empire until his death in Third Era 38, aged 106, and he was succeeded by his grandson Pelagius, and after his death, Tiber Septim ascended to godhood, becoming the ninth divine, Talos, the god of governance. So now here's the opponent's side, the heresy side. Tiber Septim was a Breton, not a Nord, who was born in Alcair High-Rock, where he grew up and learned how to fight until he joined the army of the Colovian estates. When Hjalti was summoned and went to the Greybeards, just as the Dragonborn does in the game Skyrim, they told him of a prophecy that he, Hjalti, not Cuchulainn, would serve as emperor of Tamriel. Talos would go to conquer Cyrodiil for the Colovian estates. However, after this conquest, he was haunted by this same prophecy, which drove him to assassinate Cuchulainn and burn down the palace, and to cut his own throat to avoid the suspicion that he was the assassin. After his succession to the imperial throne, Hjalti enlisted Wulfrad and Archmaid Arctus to help administer the empire. However, Wulfrad was very dissatisfied with the emperor's inaction, and therefore resigned. Later on, after Tiber Septim's annexation of Morrowind, the houses of Morrowind gave the Numidium, a giant humanoid golem created by the ancient Dwemer, in exchange for Morrowind's autonomy. This part is also mentioned in the Orthodoxy story, and it is also a part of the set-in-stone history. But according to the Heresy story, the Numidium had to have some sort of energy source, and Tiber Septim decided that would be the soul of Wulfrad. So after going their separate ways long ago, Tiber Septim convinced Wulfrad to come back to the palace. But when he did, Tiber Septim had him executed, and his soul consumed by a special soul gem, the Mentella, and then he used this Mentella to power the Numidium. Talos ruled until the age of 106, and then died and was succeeded by his grandson Pelagius. However, according to the Heresy story, Talos did not ascend to godhood. He was merely a power-hungry tyrant that lived and ruled for a long time until his death. So those are the two beliefs of Tiber Septim, or Talos, or Hjalti Earlybeard. And I think we all know what side I'm on. As a proud Stormcloak and Talos worshipper, I'm obviously on the orthodoxy side. But here's why. I'll start off with Emperor Cooler Kane's assassination according to the Heresy story, which just doesn't make sense if you ask me. In order to avoid suspicion that it was him that assassinated Cooler Kane, Tiber Septim cut his own neck. I'd understand that he'd want to give himself some sort of wound in order to look like that he was attacked by this assassin. But if that was the case, wouldn't a cut to the hip or the limb suffice? Rather than a wound that had an extremely high chance of killing him anyway. And you can't say that he only made a small wound so that it wouldn't kill him, because the wound was great enough to make him have to speak solely in whispers for the rest of his life. And also the part where he burned the palace down. I'd understand where an assassin would burn the palace down, to cover his escape, and to make sure that anyone that was in there was dead. But why would Tiber Septim burn down his palace? There's no escape that he would have to cover, and it would only add to the extremely great chance of him dying in his own assassination attempt. Now there's the second thing, the Mantella Soul Gem, which is a bit more complicated. First of all, it definitely can't contain Arctuses, because the reason the Mantella existed was to act as a substitute source of power because of the absence of the heart of Lorican. The Numidium needed a divine source of power, and there was nothing divine about Arctus. He was an archmage, yes, so he was well trained in magic, but there is nothing divine about that. Wulfrad, on the other hand, is a bit more possible. If Wulfrad was a dragonborn, which many believe that he was, then it could possibly work, because dragonborns, like dragons themselves, are small pieces of Akatosh, which makes them divine to an extent. So it could definitely work for Wulfrad if he was a dragonborn, except I don't believe that he was. Wulfrad was extremely experienced in the Thu'um, and he did die and reincarnate several times. However, the Thu'um doesn't necessarily prove that he was dragonborn, because as we all know, anyone can use the Thu'um if they are willing to spend decades of training. Ulfric Stormcloak, for example, knows the Thu'um, and he definitely isn't dragonborn. And Wulfrad was resurrected several times. However, this doesn't prove anything divine, or even magic about him. Because in Tamriel, anyone can be resurrected by a mage or a necromancer. And these two are the only pieces of evidence that Wulfrad could be divine in any sort of way. And personally, I don't buy either of them. And therefore, nor do I buy the idea that his soul powered the Mantella, which powered the Numidium. So now there's the last part, Talos' ascending to divinity. And I also agree with the orthodoxy story that after his death, Talos ascended to godhood. However, I won't explain why in this video, because that is a topic that deserves a video of its own. But overall, those are both of the stories of Tiber Septim, or Talos, or Hjaltibeard, and why overall I side with the orthodoxy theory. I'd like to hear what side you guys are on and why in the comment section. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.